Have you ever looked over the edge of a cruise ship at night and felt that strange chill crawling up your spine? The sound of the waves crashing against the hull, the endless black water stretching out in every direction, and that quiet voice in your head whispering, what if something was down there, watching you? Cruise ships are supposed to be symbols of luxury, floating cities built for joy, laughter, and escape. But beneath the music, the cocktails, and the open sea lies a hidden world of terror few people ever talk about. Because when you're hundreds of miles from land, surrounded by dark water that swallows everything,
Ow.
no one can hear you scream. Over the decades, thousands of passengers have vanished without a trace. Some simply walked out of their cabins and were never seen again. Others were found in the strangest, most horrifying ways imaginable, bodies appearing where no one could reach. Cabins sealed from the inside, whispers of shadows moving in hallways long after midnight. And the most disturbing part? Many of these stories are true, documented, witnessed, reported, yet still unsolved. Imagine being trapped in a floating hotel surrounded by miles of silent, endless ocean. Power flickers, the intercom crackles, and footsteps echo above your cabin, even though you know you're alone. You rush out into the hallway, but it is empty, only the sound of distant dripping water and the ship gently rocking beneath your feet. What would you do if the ocean itself started calling your name? Rising tension background music builds tonight. We re-diving deep into the dark side of paradise, uncovering the secrets cruise companies Dante want you to know. True accounts of passengers and crew who set sail for adventure, but found themselves facing nightmares that defy logic, reason, and even death itself. So dim your lights, turn the volume up, and hold on tight. Because once you hear these stories, you'll never look at the ocean the same way again. This is Scary Dark Narrations, and you're about to experience 7 most disturbing true cruise ship horror stories.
Join us. We're waiting.
I didn't move for a long time, just listened. The air felt cold, heavier than before. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, a drumbeat of panic I couldn't quiet. Finally, I got up, grabbed my suitcase, and decided to sleep on the upper deck until morning. But as I reached for the handle, my phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. No, caller ID. I hesitated, then answered. Static. Just static, until a voice broke through, whispering, "You shouldn't have recorded it." I froze. Who is this? Nothing. The line went dead. By sunrise, I'd had enough. Asked to change cabins. The receptionist didn't even question it, just handed me a new key card and said softly, 2 decks up, like she'd done this before. The new room was smaller, windowless, but I didn't care. And the bathroom door stayed shut all night, no sounds, no creaks. For the first time in days, I slept. When the cruise ended, I went home and tried to recover the video. I'd uploaded it to the cloud before showing it to security. Maybe the original was fine, but every copy glitched at 3:16, that exact frame right as the door began to open. The recovery programs froze, corrupted. It was as if the file didn't want to exist. Weeks passed. I stopped talking about it. But one night I plugged the phone into my computer just to charge it. The screen turned on by itself, and there it was. The video open, playing. Except it wasn't the same. I wasn't in bed. The camera was filming the mirror directly this time, as if someone had moved it. The reflection showed a figure leaning over the bed. My bed. Watching me sleep. I yanked the plug out. The screen stayed on for a few seconds longer, showing the figure straighten, its head twisting slightly as if it knew I was watching. Then the phone shut off. The next morning, my phone wouldn't turn on at all. I bought a new one, left the old one in a drawer, and told myself it was all in my head, a mix of exhaustion and paranoia. But sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I hear it again. The soft click of a heavy door, the faint scrape as it opens. It followed me home, didn't it? One night, while brushing my teeth, I caught a glimpse of something in the bathroom mirror, just for an instant. A dark silhouette standing too close behind me, head tilted the same unnatural way. I turned fast, heart pounding. No one there. But my reflection lagged half a second slower, like it was caught on something. Since then, the mirrors in my apartment distort at random times. They hum faintly, like the vibration of a ship engine far beneath the surface. Sometimes I see ocean ripples in them, faint and impossible, and sometimes I swear I smell salt in the air. I tried to throw the phone away once. The bag burst open on the way to the dumpster and it slid out, landing screen up in the dirt. The black display flickered once, then glowed dimly, showing 3:16 a.m. That's when I realized the clock never moves. It's stuck there. Now, I keep it locked in a box. Haven't opened it in months. But lately, the mirror near my bed has started to warp again, just slightly. And 2 nights ago, I heard breathing from inside the bathroom. Slow, patient, familiar. I don't know if it's the same thing from that cabin, or if something else came through when I recorded it. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see him tall, wrong, leaning just enough to fit his head into the frame. And when I open them, the mirror is never quite still. Would you dare stay in cabin 308? The ocean has a strange way of swallowing sound. I noticed it the moment I stepped into my cabin, the kind of silence that feels padded, like something's listening. I'd taken this cruise to disappear for a week, to shake off the exhaustion that had welded itself into my bones. 40-hour weeks had become 60, and my brain was a humming fluorescent light that wouldn't switch off. I didn't care about the Caribbean or the fancy dinners. I just wanted stillness, or something close to it. The cabin they gave me was small but clean. A round porthole framed nothing but gray-blue water. The bathroom door was heavy, old-fashioned, and made that muffled click when it shut, satisfying in a way, like closing off the world. That first night, I remember lying on the bed, the hum of the ship beneath me, and thinking, maybe I'd finally get to sleep without dreaming about emails. But around 3:15 a.m., I woke up to the sound of a slow creak. The bathroom door was easing open, not pushed by a wave or draft, but inch by inch, like someone was testing how quiet they could be. I lay there frozen, watching the sliver of darkness widen. Then it stopped halfway, the silence folding back over me. The next morning I convinced myself it was the ship's motion. Maybe the latch wasn't tight. I wedged a towel under the door that night, double-checking the angle, making sure it couldn't move. But when the clock hit 3:16 a.m., it opened again. The towel didn't even shift. By the third night, irritation had replaced fear. I called maintenance. A guy named Ricardo showed up, cheerful but tired. He checked the hinges, shook the door, and said, "No way this opens on its own, man. It's too stiff. If anything, it should stay shut." I laughed it off, but that night I set my phone up on the desk, propped against a coffee mug pointed straight at the bathroom. I hit record around 3 a.m. and fell asleep with the light off, the faint hum of the engines vibrating through the floor. When I woke at 6, sunlight pressed against the porthole. I went straight to the phone, expecting to see nothing but darkness. Instead, at exactly 3:16, the door creaked open. Slow, deliberate. But it was Ozzy the door that made me cold all over. It was what showed in the mirror. For a second, just a single frozen frame, there was a man standing behind me. Tall, thin, dressed in a dark suit, like someone on their way to a funeral. His arms looked too long and his head tilted slightly, unnaturally, like it didn't fit his body. I watched that frame over and over, my pulse thudding in my ears. The TV was off. The lights were off. There was no way that reflection came from me. The mirror caught him clearly, too clearly, as if he belonged in that room. I tore the towel away and checked every inch of the cabin. Closet, under the bed, bathroom, nothing. Just silence and the slow rhythm of my own breathing. I went straight to security. Didn't mention ghosts, just said I thought someone had been in my room. The security guy, Josh, watched the clip. When it reached 3:16, the screen glitched, 2 seconds of black, and skipped straight to me sleeping. He frowned and said, "Files corrupted. Might be transfer interference." But I knew what I saw. That night, they said housekeeping needed to check something in my room. A woman named Margot showed up with a clipboard. She barely stepped inside, her eyes flicking to the bathroom mirror before she started writing. "Has anyone ever complained about this cabin?" I asked. She hesitated just for a second and said, "No, sir. Not that I'm aware of." But her tone was rehearsed, practiced. As she left, she murmured, "This room stayed empty for a while after the accident. But I don't know details." The word accident stuck in my head like a hook. The next morning I asked the front desk if they could confirm what happened in my cabin. The woman typed in the number, and her polite smile faltered. "I'm sorry, but I can't share guest records." When I pressed, she said the room had been unoccupied for almost 11 months before I checked in. Almost a year.
I know.
No explanation, no reason. That night, the air in the cabin felt wrong, dense, like I was breathing through cloth. I sat up with the light on, eyes flicking between the porthole and the mirror. At some point, I must have drifted off because I woke to the soft sound of breathing. Not mine. Deep, steady, right behind me. I spun around. The bathroom door was cracked open again, even though I'd wedged my shoe under it this time. Then, silence swallowed everything. The first thing I remember is the smell of salt and sunscreen that clung to everything. After the divorce, I needed silence more than company. My friends had begged me to come to Vegas, to drink and dance and laugh too loudly in bars where the floor stuck to your shoes, but I couldn't fake happiness anymore. The cruise sounded quieter. A few days at sea with nothing but water on all sides felt like the only way to breathe again. I booked a mid-tier line, not fancy, not cheap, just enough to disappear for a while. My cabin had a balcony. I told myself the ocean air might wash something clean inside me. The first 2 days passed in a kind of peaceful numbness. I'd wake early, walk the deck as the sun broke the horizon, and watch light ripple across the waves like molten glass. Read novels I didn't care about and sipped cocktails that were far too sweet. The sound of the engines below deck became a heartbeat I could rest against. It was the first time in years I felt invisible, and somehow, that invisibility was a relief. On the third night, I followed faint music through the corridor, ending up in the small casino near the ship's center. The air smelled of cheap champagne and recycled air conditioning. The lights blinked in lazy rhythms. Only a few people sat at machines, faces lit by their glowing screens. Behind the counter stood 2 staff members. One of them, a man with a thick beard and a crooked bow tie, smiled at me. It wasn't the rehearsed cruise line smile, though. His eyes were too tired to knowing, like he'd been awake longer than the rest of us. I sat down at a penny slot near the back, pressed a few buttons, and zoned out. The hum of the machines became hypnotic. Then, suddenly, a shrill, cheerful chime. The screen exploded in light and color. I'd won something big. My heart jolted as credits poured out, the sound echoing against the empty room. The bearded attendant appeared beside me, clapping softly. "Lucky night," he said, his tone calm, almost gentle. He offered to take my photo for the winner's wall. I laughed it off. "No thanks." He nodded once, eyes holding mine a second too long. Back in my cabin, I ordered wine through the app and sat on the balcony, letting the sea breeze tangle my hair. For the first time, I felt almost human again. I undressed slowly, watching my reflection in the mirror unguarded because for once, no one was watching, or so I believed. That night I left the curtains half open, the TV glowing faintly behind me. The sound of waves blurred into the hum of the engine, and I fell asleep to the steady motion of the sea. When morning came, something white lay under my cabin door. An envelope. No name, no markings. I thought it might be a receipt or message from staff, but when I slid it open, a single glossy photo fell out, and my body turned to ice. It was me, from last night, half undressed, back turned, frozen mid-motion as I unhooked my bra. The image had that flat, sterile lighting of a security feed, the kind that watches, not observes. My chest tightened. The angle was slightly above eye level from the corner of the ceiling, a place I'd barely noticed before. I looked up, scanning the room. My pulse pounded in my ears. There it was, a small black dome in the far corner. I'd seen it when I checked in. I'd assumed it was a smoke detector or maintenance sensor. But now I could see it. The faint red ring pulsing faintly in the dim morning light. I climbed onto the chair and stared straight into that tiny red eye. Stared back, cold, silent, recording. Panic came in waves. It tore the room apart, drawers, vents, lamps, searching for anything else that didn't belong. My hands shook so badly I dropped the photo twice. Every reflection looked wrong now. It's the mirror of the TV screen. Even the window glass seemed to shimmer with hidden eyes. By the time I reached guest services, I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the envelope. The woman at the counter smiled the same way you smile at a lost tourist. "How can I help you today?" she asked. I told her about the camera in my cabin. I told her about the photo. Her smile didn't falter, not right away. When I held up the picture, something flickered across her face. Not surprise, recognition. She asked me to wait, then disappeared through a back door. A minute later, a man in a dark blazer appeared. He introduced himself as Eric from the ship's security team. His voice was calm, too calm. He asked if I could follow him to an office to discuss the situation. The office was windowless, cold. I laid the photo on the table between us. He looked at it for a long time before speaking. "When did you find this?" His questions came one after another. What time had I gone to bed? Did I have guests in the cabin? Had I interacted with anyone suspicious? When I mentioned the bearded man from the casino, Eric's jaw tightened just slightly, enough for me to notice. Then, silence swallowed everything. Eric stood up without a word and walked to a small gray cabinet in the corner. He opened it, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table. My throat went dry before I even saw what was inside. 6 photos, printed on the same glossy paper. Different rooms, different women. One brushing her teeth, another sleeping, one crying, her face buried in a towel. None of them looked posed. None of them knew they were being watched. Eric didn't explain. He didn't have to. His silence said everything. "There's been a technical issue," he finally muttered. "Internal security breach. Someone rerouted maintenance cameras to record video feeds." His words sounded rehearsed, polished by lawyers. I asked how long it had been happening. He hesitated. "A few weeks," he said, but his eyes told me otherwise. "Was it the man from the casino?" I asked. My voice trembled. Eric didn't answer. He just looked down at the folder, pressing the corners flat with his fingers. That silence was my answer. They offered me compensation, a refund, a future cruise credit, a letter of apology signed by someone in corporate who'd never stepped foot on this ship. I refused. Eric didn't push. He simply slid a paper toward me, an NDA. "Standard procedure," he said. My hands felt numb as I signed it. I just wanted to leave, to be anywhere but there. When I got home, I unplugged everything with a lens, my laptop, my phone charger, even my TV. For weeks, I couldn't sleep unless every curtain was shut tight. My therapist called it situational paranoia, but I knew it wasn't paranoia if it was real once. Sometimes, I hear the faint click of a camera shutter in my dreams. That soft mechanical snap. I wake up gasping, certain that I'm being watched again. One night I decided to check something. I dug out the photo, the one from the envelope. I'd folded it in half and locked it away. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Something was different. The photo was the same moment, same lighting, same pose, but in the reflection on the mirror behind me, I could see a shadow. A figure standing just outside the bathroom door. I hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I stared until my vision blurred. My skin went cold. It wasn't just me being recorded. Someone had been in the room. Every part of me wanted to burn that photo, to end it. But I couldn't. What if destroying it erased proof of what happened? What if it was the only thing keeping me from being next? Now, every hotel, every Airbnb, every rented cabin, I scan the ceiling corners first. I whisper under my breath, "Is anyone there?" Sometimes I swear I hear a faint click in reply. Last month, an email arrived from an unknown sender. No subject, no message, just one attachment, a still image, low resolution. My stomach dropped when I opened it. It was my bedroom. Last night. Same angle, same distance. Someone still watching. Would you dare sail with them again? The ocean had always felt calming to me. Endless blue, the gentle hum of engines beneath my feet, the air tasting faintly of salt and steel. That's why I didn't hesitate when Mom surprised me with a last-minute cruise. She said we needed this 1 week of sun, food, and peace before summer spun out of control. I'd just left another dead-end job, recently single again, and I was tired of staring at the same 4 apartment walls. So I said yes. I wanted quiet. I had no idea what kind of quiet I was really agreeing to. Our cabin sat at the very end of a narrow hallway, One of those forgotten corridors where even sound seemed hesitant to travel. Beige walls, soft amber sconces, a faint mix of salt water and disinfectant in the air. It was perfect. No slamming doors, no drunken laughter outside at 2 a.m., just stillness. Beside our room was a locked crew-only door leading down a stairwell guests weren't allowed to use. I remember thinking it was strange how isolated that door felt, like a mouth sealed shut for a reason. The first few nights passed peacefully. We ate, laughed, watched sunsets that bled into the sea. But by the third night, something shifted. I woke up abruptly, heart thudding, and checked the clock. 2:07 a.m. Then came the sound. Click. Click, heels. Sharp and deliberate. The sound echoed faintly through the hall, rhythmic, almost patient. Someone was walking slowly toward our door. The steps stopped right in front of it. My breath caught, waiting for a knock, but nothing came, just silence, heavy and complete. I stared through the peephole. No one was there. Only the humming fluorescent light above, flickering once before steadying again. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same steps, always stopping at our door. Each time I told myself it had to be a crew member, maybe a late shift worker heading to the staff stairwell. But the click of those heels didn't sound hurried or tired. They sounded measured, purposeful. As if whoever it was had a reason to stop right outside my room. Listen. By the fourth night, I started dreading sleep. The moment the lights dimmed, I'd feel that tension crawl under my skin. Around 2 a.m., I'd lie awake, heartbeat sinking with the ship's subtle rocking, waiting. When the first click echoed, my chest would seize. The sound would draw closer, click, 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 until it halted at the door again. Then, stillness. That night I kept my phone in hand, ready to record. The moment I heard the steps, I moved silently, peering through the peephole. Nothing. Just the dim hall stretching endlessly, the crew door faintly reflecting light. Yet the sound didn't stop. It was right there, inches away, invisible, but certain. Then, as if realizing I was watching, it stopped. On the fifth night, I didn't wait. When the footsteps reached our door, I yanked it open. My pulse was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. At first, nothing. Just the corridor, empty, humming with faint engine vibration. But then, movement. At the far end of the hall, a figure turned the corner. A woman. She moved too smoothly, gliding rather than walking, as if her body wasn't fully touching the ground. She wore a dark navy uniform, crisp and old-fashioned like flight attendants from the 1960s, complete with a small hat pinned above dark hair. Before I could speak, she disappeared through the staff stairwell door, which closed behind her with a metallic sigh. The echo lingered longer than it should have. I stood frozen, feeling the ship's faint tremor beneath my bare feet, the scent of salt sharper now. My mom's voice broke the silence, half asleep, mumbling, asking why I was up. I told her someone had walked past our door. She murmured something about calling security and turned over. I didn't sleep again that night. Next morning, I went to the guest services desk. When I mentioned the uniform, the attendant frowned. "No one wears anything like that," she said, "especially not at night." Her tone was polite, but her eyes flickered. Not confusion, but recognition she didn't want to admit. Back in the cabin, I couldn't shake the image of that uniform. It was too specific, too deliberate. I searched online for vintage cruise uniforms. Nothing matched. The closest I found was an old 1980s ad for a defunct cruise line, but even that wasn't right, as the ship rocked gently under a bright afternoon sky. I stared at that locked stairwell door beside our room and thought about how easily the handle had moved for her. That evening, I asked a staff member near the dining hall if the stairwell was still used. He gave me a strange look. "That one? It's been sealed off for years," he said. "After a small fire down on deck 3, nobody uses it anymore." His words didn't make sense. The door still opened. I'd seen it. Heard it. That night, as the ship drifted across a moonlit sea, I kept glancing at that door through the thin curtain of my half-open cabin window. Every creak of the hull felt like footsteps echoing down the hall. And when I finally drifted off, I dreamed of the woman's silhouette turning that corner again, her heels never touching the ground. Then silence swallowed everything. The morning of our last full day. Mom pulled out an old family photo album from her suitcase, something she depacked to show me memories from our first cruise decades ago. "You were just a toddler," she said, smiling. I flipped through the glossy pages, laughing at Dad's mustache and her oversized sunglasses. Then my laughter froze. In one photo, taken on the open deck under a bright summer sky, a figure stood halfway behind a lifeboat. Blurry, but distinct. Long navy skirt, stiff white collar, small cap tilted just so. The same uniform, the same posture, the same wrong stillness. My mom squinted at the picture. "Probably just another passenger," she said. I nodded, pretending to agree, but inside I felt cold spread through my chest. The date in the corner read July 1994. I was 3 years old. That photo was taken decades before this cruise on a completely different ship. Back home a few days later, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I told myself there had to be a logical reason. Maybe the cruise line reused uniform designs. Maybe my memory exaggerated what I saw. But every time I closed my eyes, I heard those heels again. The deliberate rhythm. Stop right outside my door. The pause. The waiting. So I emailed the cruise company, attached the photo, and described everything. The uniform, the footsteps, the stairwell. 2 weeks later, I got a short, emotionless reply. No records exist of uniforms matching the description. The stairwell near cabin 419 was permanently sealed after a malfunction during a fire drill in 2003. No guest access has been possible since then. That was it. No explanation, no apology, just finality. I read the email over and over, feeling the room darken around me. I could still see her, the faint shimmer of her outline in the dim hall. The gliding motion, her head turning slightly as if she knew I was watching. Some nights I dream of her walking that hallway endlessly, the sharp click of her heels echoing into infinity. Other nights I wake to the faint sound of footsteps in my apartment, uneven, distant, but familiar. And sometimes they stop right outside my bedroom door. Last week I took the photo out again. The edges were worn now, the colors faded. Under the soft lamplight, I noticed something I hadn't before, a faint reflection on the lifeboat beside her. It wasn't the sea, it was a door, my door, reflection of a corridor that shouldn't exist on an open deck. My throat tightened. I traced the image with my finger, and for a brief second, I could swear I heard that quiet click, 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 coming from somewhere behind me. I froze, waited. Nothing. The apartment felt heavy, the air dense with that same metallic tang from the cruise ship. I set the photo down, turned off the light, and crawled into bed. But sleep didn't come. Somewhere deep in the dark, I thought I heard the faint shift of weight, the creak of the floorboards, and then a single deliberate step. I whispered into the dark, "What do you want?" Silence. Then, as if responding, the soft scrape of heels moved once across the floor, stopping just beside my bed. The air grew cold enough for my breath to mist. I didn't dare open my eyes. The sound lingered for a long, suffocating moment before fading away, replaced only by the faint hum of the city outside. When morning came, the photo was gone, not misplaced gone. Only a faint square of dust on my nightstand where it had rested. Now, every night at exactly 2:07 a.m., I wake up without reason, and somewhere in the quiet beyond the walls, I hear her. The same patient rhythm, the same impossible heels clicking closer, and every time she stops, she's closer than before. Would you dare return to that ship? The ocean always sounded different at night. It's not soothing, just vast, empty, endless. I'd been working as a night shift janitor on cruise ships for about a year, long enough to know how silence could crawl under your skin, when the only thing between you and the black water was a thin layer of steel. My ex-wife had left months before, taking what was left of my peace with her. My son Ethan was 6. My sister watched him while I was gone. I told myself I did this for him, those long nights, the smell of bleach and salt, the endless repetition. But deep down, I think I just wanted to disappear for a while. Every corridor on that ship felt the same. White lights humming overhead, the air to clean, like it had been scrubbed of warmth. I'd push my mop cart past sleeping cabins, past polished brass doors that reflected my face in distorted shapes. Some nights I'd put in my earbuds, listen to podcasts just to drown out the hollow drone of the engines. Other nights, I'd let the silence take over. It wasn't peaceful silence. It was the kind that made you feel watched. It was on the 4th night of our Caribbean route when I met him. I was emptying trash bins near the back of the Leo deck, where passengers rarely lingered after midnight. He was sitting alone near the railing, staring into the black ocean like it was staring back. The ocean at night, he said quietly, makes you feel small, doesn't it? His voice was soft, like each word had to sneak past something lodged in his throat. His name was Druthan, pale, eyes ringed with exhaustion, but his smile had this practiced gentleness that made you lower your guard. We talked for a bit, small stuff, my hours, the work, how lonely it got out here. He said he was a freelance writer working on a book about isolation at sea. That made sense. People came on these cruises chasing solitude all the time. I didn't think much of it. Still, there was something about the way he watched me talk focused, like he was memorizing every word. Over the next few nights, I saw him again, always in the same spot near the back railing, always alone. We fell into this odd rhythm. I'd take my break there, sip my coffee, and he'd be waiting like he knew my schedule better than I did. He joked about how I must have access to every locked door on the ship. I laughed, told him the master badge was the only real perk. The way he smiled when I said that, something about it made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. Loneliness does strange things to people out here. 3 days later, Drew was gone. No note, no goodbye. I figured he'd gotten off at the last port. Then, when I clocked in that night, my stomach dropped. My locker door was slightly open. I always double-check it. Inside, my uniform jacket was gone. So was my master access badge. I tore through everything, hoping I'd misplaced it, but I hadn't. My hands were shaking as I told security. They barely looked up, told me to check again later. Probably a mistake. That night, the ship didn't feel right. Every echo in the hallway sounded heavier, like footsteps following half a beat behind mine. Every door I passed seemed to breathe. I kept seeing my reflection in the porthole, glass-dyed, hollow-eyed Dan for the first time. It didn't look like me. The following night, the rumors started. Someone had broken into the jewelry boutique's storage room using a master-level badge. The cameras near that corridor had conveniently malfunctioned. Nothing big was stolen, but the timing was too perfect. Security called me in, their tone clipped, rehearsed. "Did you lend your badge to anyone?" "No." "Did anyone have access to your locker?" "No." "We'll review the footage," they said, like they'd already made up their minds. After that, everything changed. The kitchen crew stopped talking to me. My supervisor reassigned me, restricted access. Half the ship became off-limits overnight. Every time I caught someone's glance, it lingered just a second too long. I told myself it would blow over. But then, 2 nights later, someone tried to swipe into the engine room. That's when things turned dark. Security intercepted the attempt, but the intruder escaped. They used a master badge, my badge. I got dragged back into the security room, heart pounding, palms slick. They showed me the footage. A tall man in a janitor uniform, walking down D-deck like he belonged there. He turned toward the camera for half a second, long enough for my world to collapse. It was Drew, wearing my uniform. My badge clipped to the front. Even the way he walked, it was my walk. If I hadn't known him, I'd have sworn I was looking at myself. Then, silence swallowed everything. They froze the footage on his face, and the room felt suddenly smaller. The head of security leaned in, studying me, then said, "He's not in the system." No room, no booking, nothing. My skin went cold. I had seen his room key. I had talked to him for days. How does someone live on a ship without existing on paper? The next morning, we docked in Puerto Rico. Security swept every deck, every cabin. Nothing. His room was spotless, no luggage, no clothes, no trace he'd ever been there. Just an empty mug on the balcony table and a neatly folded towel on the bed. The kind of touch you'd expect from me. It was like he'd vanished into the ocean, or worse, into the walls of the ship. I finished the rotation, but the days after blurred into paranoia. I couldn't shake the feeling that Drew was still there, hiding just out of sight. Sometimes I'd hear faint footsteps echo behind me in the empty corridors. Once, in the reflection of a stainless steel door, I thought I saw my own face staring back, but smiling when I wasn't. After the cruise ended, I went home to Florida. I told myself it was over. I tried to settle back into routine, back to Ethan and normal life, but then the letter came. Suspension notice from the Department of Motor Vehicles. DUI arrest. Oregon. I hadn't been to Oregon in my life. I called the number. They read my full name, birth date, even my social security number. My throat tightened. I asked for the mugshot. Blurry, grainy, but it was him, Drew, or whatever he really was. He'd cut his hair shorter, grown faint stubble, but the eyes. They were mine, or something wearing mine. The months after were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and explaining to strangers that I was me. My credit tanked, my work clearance froze, and every time someone said my name, I wondered who else might be using it. I started carrying notarized letters proving my identity. Sometimes I'd catch myself saying my name out loud just to hear it, to make sure it still felt like mine. But the part that keeps me up at night isn't the legal mess. It's what happened on the ship, how he learned me. The way he'd tilt his head when I talked, how he'd mimic my laugh without realizing it. He wasn't just stealing my information, he was studying me. I think that's what he did. He found people like me alone unseen, and wore them like new skin. Now, even when I switch cruise lines, I still keep my badge on a chain around my neck, hidden under my uniform. I check my locker 3 times before every shift. But sometimes, when I pass a mirror in the quiet halls, I catch a flicker just a millisecond of something off. A reflection standing straighter than I am, smiling wider, breathing slower. Last week, a new janitor joined the crew. Friendly guy. Said he used to freelance as a writer. Something about isolation at sea. His smile was gentle, familiar. That night, when I passed by the Leo deck, I saw someone sitting near the back railing just where Drew used to sit. The ocean stretched out, endless and black. He turned his head slightly when I walked by, just enough for the light to catch his face. And for one heartbeat, just one, I swear it was me. Would you dare return to this ship? The first time I saw him, I felt something tighten in my chest, a subtle unease I couldn't quite explain. Brooke and I had just boarded the cruise, 9 days into our marriage, still floating in that surreal calm that follows a wedding whirlwind. The ship hummed beneath our feet, sunlight flashing off the water like tiny mirrors. It was supposed to be perfect 5 nights through the Eastern Caribbean. No work, no dishes, no responsibilities. It's just us, finally breathing again. We'd booked a mid-tier cabin with a narrow balcony overlooking the endless blue. Not luxury, but it felt like a sanctuary after months of planning chaos. Deck 7, starboard side. A strange number to remember, but I can't forget it now. When we arrived, he was already there, standing by the railing just outside the neighboring cabin. A tall, slightly hunched man in a beige windbreaker zipped all the way to his chin. His hair was white, thin, and he had these pale, watery blue eyes that didn't seem to focus on me so much as through me. "Call me Rick," he said, holding a drink that sloshed with the ship's sway. His smile didn't move his eyes. Brooke, ever polite, introduced us, but Rick kept calling her young lady like her name had slipped straight past him. He talked about cruises he'd taken, dozens, he said, and gave us buffet tips we didn't ask for. His tone was warm, almost grandfatherly, but his pauses lingered too long. Every time Brooke laughed, I noticed his head tilt just slightly, like he was memorizing the sound. That night, the ocean outside whispered against the hull. We cracked open the balcony door for air and drifted into sleep until I woke to the sound of pacing. It wasn't above us or in the hallway. It was next to us, right through the wall that divided our cabins. 5 or 6 steps. Stop. Then again, Brooke's voice was a whisper. "Do you hear that too?" The rhythm was steady, patient. Then came the faint tapping, soft, metallic, like a fingernail against the vent that connected our rooms. I pressed my ear to the wall, but the moment I did, it stopped. Silence. Thick, deliberate silence. The next morning, Rick was outside again, a paperback in his hands. He greeted us like nothing had happened, smiling that same waxy smile. Behind him, his cabin door was cracked open just an inch. Not enough to see inside, but enough to feel. Watched cabin doors on the ship lock automatically unless wedged. So why was his open? We brushed it off. Maybe he just didn't care. Maybe he was harmless. The second night, though, the pacing began earlier, heavier this time. followed by a faint whisper, not clear words, just breathy murmurs bleeding through the vent, like a secret conversation. Brooke sat up, clutching the sheets, eyes wide. "What? What's he saying?" she whispered. I leaned closer to the vent, listening a hiss of syllables, too low to understand, but unmistakably human. I knocked on the wall once, firm. Everything stopped. No pacing, no whispering. Just silence, the kind that presses against your chest. We told a crew member the next morning. Kind-faced guy named Malik, clipboard in hand, told us cabin walls were thin, could be a TV or snoring. He promised to check, but his tone said he didn't believe us. By noon, the unease had faded. The sun burned bright, the ocean sparkled, and for a while we laughed again, till Brooke stopped dead in the hallway that afternoon. Folded neatly on the railing outside our room was a pair of her underwear, black and pink, the kind she'd packed but hadn't worn yet. Perfectly folded, creased like a gift. Her voice trembled. This was in my suitcase. We both stared at Rick's door, closed, silent. That night, we slept with the lights on. I wedged the vanity chair under the door handle. A childish move, but it made Brooke feel safer. Around 3 a.m. I heard it, the faint metallic click of the doorknob being tested. Not turning, just pressed. My breath caught. Then silence swallowed everything. The next morning, Rick was gone. His chair on the balcony sat empty, his door closed tight. For a brief moment, I thought maybe he'd disembarked for an excursion, maybe everything was fine. But that evening, when we came back from dinner, our cabin door app showed 4 keycard entries while we'd been gone. Both our cards were with us. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Then the small wrongnesses began to surface. Brooke's suitcase half-zipped. My shaving kit moved from the drawer to the bed. Every zipper slightly open, every latch disturbed, like someone had searched without taking. We called guest services immediately. Carla, a woman with a badge that read Security Liaison, arrived with an officer. They scanned the door and confirmed what I already knew. The room had only been opened by one of 3 registered cards. Mine, Brooke's, or Rick's. But when she checked the records, her face changed. Theirs. "No one registered in the cabin next to you," she said slowly. 7147's unoccupied for this voyage. Brooke's lips parted. "That's impossible." I showed them a photo Brooke had taken on our second day, a balcony selfie, sunlit and perfect. But zoom in, and you could see Rick's arm resting on the railing beside us. Proof he existed. Security unlocked the cabin while we waited in the hallway. The door swung open with a soft hiss. Inside, nothing. The bed made. No luggage, no smell of life. Just emptiness. Except the faint scent of stale cologne lingered in the air, sharp and metallic. The officer peeled a napkin taped behind the bathroom mirror, numbers scrawled across it. And one word beneath them. Observation. Brooke's hand found mine, trembling. We were moved that night to a different deck. I double-locked the new cabin, shoved towels under the door, and kept my eyes on the hallway. Brooke barely spoke. She checked her bag every hour, like expecting something to reappear. By morning, we tried pretending again. Sunlight, breakfast, smiles for strangers. But dread clung like humidity, invisible, constant. Then around noon, Malik caught me near the stairwell. "Sir," he said quietly, "I checked last night's footage. You might want to hear this." He looked around before lowering his voice. "We have hallway cameras on deck 7. Around 2:46 a.m., someone walked past your door, tall, wearing beige. But when security zoomed in, the time stomp looped. It's like the footage reset itself, repeating the same 8 seconds. My stomach turned. What does that mean?" He just shook his head. "We're not sure." That night in our new cabin, I woke to the faint scrape of metal. The balcony door latch. Slowly lifting, sat up. Frozen. The latch lowered again, as if something outside had been testing it. Brooke whispered, "Please tell me that was you." I couldn't. Hours later, unable to sleep, I scrolled through my phone to that same balcony photo. Only now, zoomed in fully, I noticed something I'd missed before. Rick's hand wasn't resting on the railing. It was wrapped around it. And behind the thin curtain of our room, barely visible, was the reflection of a second face. My own, but my eyes were open wide, staring directly back at him. I dropped the phone. The cruise ended the next morning. We left before sunrise, barely speaking, hearts pounding with relief, just to see land. We reported everything to the cruise line, but they gave us nothing but apologies and a discount we'd never use. Even now, months later, I can't shake it. Every hallway with yellow light makes my pulse quicken. Every soft click of a doorknob sends me back there to that cabin, to that silence. Sometimes when I lie awake at night, I think about Rick, about the word observation. And I wonder if no one was ever registered in that room, who or what was watching us through the vent. Would you dare return to that ship? I didn't think the sea could feel so endless until that first night. There's something about being surrounded by water on every side that makes you feel like you've left the world behind. Vanessa and I had boarded the ship in Fort Lauderdale, giddy with graduation freedom and cheap champagne. 7 days of sun, salt, and forgetting who we were supposed to be. She was the wild one, loud enough for the both of us. I was fine watching from the sidelines, letting her pull me into the tide of her confidence. I'd never even been on a cruise before. The moment we stepped into that small cabin, I laughed. It was barely bigger than my dorm room. 2 single beds, a mirrored closet that warped the light, and a faint humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. That first night was chaos, in the best way. We danced until our feet ached, came back reeking of rum and sweat, and collapsed into our beds, laughing at nothing. Vanessa locked the door herself, deadbolt and handle both on, said, "See? No sea ghost getting us tonight." I remember her saying that. I remember watching her twist that lock. And yet when I woke sometime before dawn, the cold hit me first. It wasn't the air conditioning kind of chill. It was heavy, damp. My teeth clenched without me realizing. The room looked the same, except the door was cracked open, just enough to let in a sliver of hallway light. I didn't move at first. I stared at the glow slicing across the carpet. Vanessa was asleep, breathing slow and steady. For a moment I told myself maybe she'd have gone out for a drink or two, find cell service, but she was right there. I slipped out of bed and pushed the door shut, the metal latch clicking louder than it should have. I relocked it, even tested the handle. Then I just stood there, staring at my reflection in the mirrored closet, feeling my pulse in my ears. The next morning I told her. She shrugged, brushing mascara off her lashes. "He probably forgot to lock it," she said. I wanted to argue, but I let it go. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was too tipsy, too tired. Still, something about it felt wrong, like the cabin itself was watching, waiting for me to second-guess myself. Over the next few days, little things started disappearing.
Ow.
My bracelet from my nightstand, lipstick I swore I'd set next to the charger. Vanessa teased me, saying I was a mess, but when I retraced every step, I knew I hadn't misplaced anything. The ship felt bigger now, its hallways longer, quieter. Every sound seemed magnified, the clang of distant pipes, the hum behind the walls. Sometimes when we walked back from the upper deck at night, I'd swear I heard footsteps following us, perfectly timed with ours, until we stopped. By the 4th night, I was done pretending it was nothing. Before heading out, I took photos of everything: our bags, the vanity, even the shoe I wedged against the cabin door. Not to block it, just enough so that if it moved, I'd know. Vanessa thought I was being paranoid, but I didn't care. When we returned from the deck movie, the room looked untouched, except that sneaker had shifted. Barely, but enough to see the dent in the carpet where it used to be. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hull made my skin crawl. I lay there, half awake, until around 2 a.m. When the air changed again, it got still. Not silent, but expectant. The kind of stillness before a door opens or something moves. Then I heard it, a soft metallic click. Then slowly, the doorknob began to turn. Not a rattle, not someone fumbling. It was deliberate, smooth, controlled. My breath caught in my throat. The handle turned halfway, then stopped. Nothing followed. The silence after was worse than the sound. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. When I finally dared to move, I found the door locked again, perfectly in place. But my sneaker, it wasn't by the door anymore. It was across the room. Then silence swallowed everything. Morning light felt cruel, too bright for how little sleep I'd gotten. I told Vanessa what happened, the handle turning, the sneaker moving, and, for the first time, she didn't laugh. Her face went pale. She said her headphones had vanished days ago, but didn't want to freak me out. That's when we went to guest services. The woman behind the counter smiled too much, like she'd been trained not to react. But her eyes flicked away when I said someone had been in our room. She promised to have security check the logs and moved us 2 floors up. The new room felt the same layout, same hum, but it was cleaner, emptier somehow. I should have felt safer. I didn't. That night, I kept waiting for something to happen. I kept listening for that sound. Nothing came, just the constant vibration of the engines beneath us and Vanessa's restless breathing beside me. The next morning, we went back to the old cabin to grab her forgotten clothes. The door was open. Housekeeping was inside. I stepped in first and stopped cold. On my old bed's pillow sat my missing bracelet, neatly coiled, gleaming in the weak daylight. I didn't touch it, didn't have to. It was too deliberate, too placed. The cleaning lady looked at me like she'd seen something she shouldn't. "I haven't started that bed yet," she whispered. Later, a man from security called. His tone was polite but strained. He said they'd checked the keycard logs. No entries between midnight and 7 a.m. on any of the nights we'd stayed. No master key, no staff access. Nothing. I asked if there could have been a malfunction. He hesitated before saying that's not supposed to be possible. Then he hung up. After that, something changed between Vanessa and me. We stayed in crowds, avoided the cabin except to sleep, and barely spoke. The ship no longer felt like a vacation, it felt like a trap floating in open water. Every reflection, every creak, every flicker of light in that mirrored closet made my heart race. When we finally docked back in Florida, I felt a weight lift, but not completely. Vanessa and I hugged, but it was stiff, hollow. We promised to stay close, to laugh about it one day. We haven't. Months passed, and the silence between us grew. Sometimes I still wake in the night and see the shape of that cracked door in my mind, light spilling through like a blade. I never brought the bracelet home. I left it there on the pillow, exactly where I'd found it, because deep down, I knew it wasn't mine anymore. But whatever had taken it, whatever had been there with us, wanted me to know it could come and go as it pleased. That it had always been watching. Maybe someone found it later, thought it was just a lost trinket. Maybe it's still there, in that cabin, waiting for the next guests. But sometimes, when I hear a faint click in the dark, just a doorknob shifting in its socket, can still smell the sea. Would you dare sleep in that cabin? The ocean had its own kind of silence, not absence of sound, but a low, endless hum that lived beneath everything. I remember standing on that balcony, the night air brushing against my face, and thinking how strange it felt to be surrounded by nothing but dark water for miles. I'd taken the cruise to help my sister, Nicole, forget. After 7 years trapped in a marriage that had drained her, she needed something that felt alive again. I thought a week at sea might fix things, or at least distract her. The first few days felt almost too peaceful. Our cabins were side by side, close enough that we could lean over the rail and talk like kids again. She'd laugh at the glow of the waves, point out distant ships, and I'd watch the moonlight flicker in her eyes, a softness I hadn't seen in years. The ship itself had that overly clean, artificial warmth, hallways that smelled like citrus disinfectant, carpet that sparked static every time I walked barefoot. It felt safe in a corporate, sterile kind of way. Safe enough that I started to forget the world outside the ship even existed. By the 4th night, that illusion shattered. It was 3:07 a.m. when heavy knocking jolted me awake, fast, desperate, the kind of knock that carried fear in its rhythm. Before I even reached the door, I knew it was Nicole. She was barefoot, trembling, her sleep shirt clinging to her like she'd just run through rain. She didn't wait for me to speak. "Someone was on my balcony," she whispered. Her voice sounded like it had been drained of all color. At first, I tried to stay calm. Half asleep logic told me it was impossible. Maybe she'd dreamed it. Maybe a drunk passenger had wandered onto the wrong balcony. But she was shaking her head before I could even suggest it. "I saw him," she said. "He wasn't moving. He was just standing there watching me." I walked with her back to her room, my heart thudding faster than my steps. The glass door was locked from the inside. The balcony was empty, nothing but the reflection of our pale faces in the glass. I stepped outside. Cold air brushed past me, carrying the scent of salt and something faintly metallic. No footprints, no noise. Just the ocean, endless and indifferent. Nicole refused to sleep alone that night. We both lay awake in my cabin, the faint hum of the engine filling every silence. I stared at the ceiling, waiting for something, a sound, a scrape, a reason to make sense of her fear. But the night passed without another sign. The next morning, I went to guest services. The man at the counter smiled too easily, the kind of customer service grin that made everything sound harmless. "Balconies aren't monitored," he said. "Cameras are only in the halls and main decks. Probably just someone having a little too much fun." I wanted to believe him. But when Nicole avoided the balcony that night, when her eyes kept flicking toward the drawn curtains, I knew she didn't tea. We decided I'd stay in her room again. She tried to laugh it off, saying she was being paranoid, but her voice cracked halfway through. We locked the door, pulled the curtains tight, and pushed a lounge chair against the handle. A childish barrier against something we didn't understand. I lay awake scrolling through my phone, the faint blue light dancing across the ceiling. The ship's creaks blended with the steady churn of waves. Nicole's breathing grew steady beside me, deep and uneven with exhaustion. At 2:44 a.m., the curtain rippled. It wasn't the air vent that was on the opposite wall. The movement was deliberate, a soft pull and release, like fingers letting go of fabric. My pulse quickened. I sat up, staring at that spot until my chest ached from holding my breath. I stood, stepped closer, and yanked the curtain aside. The balcony was empty. But when I crouched, I noticed it faint shoe scuffs along the edge of the railing, small streaks where rubber had dragged across the metal. And then I saw it. The divider between balconies wasn't sealed. It was a narrow gap, just wide enough for a body to slip through sideways. A shiver ran down my back as I stared at the next cabin. Its curtains had been closed since day one. No lights, no sound. I'd assumed it was empty. But those marks, they meant someone had been climbing between balconies, watching. I didn't tell Nicole. I just sat by the glass door until morning, lights on, eyes fixed on the faint line of the curtain. Every sound, every creak, every whisper of wind felt alive. The sea outside looked blacker than usual, like it was listening. Then, silence swallowed everything. The next morning, I went straight back to guest services. This time, I didn't hold back. I told them everything. The scuff marks, the curtain moving, the gap between balconies. The woman at the desk smiled politely, typing something into her computer. "We'll notify security," she said. Her tone was too calm, too rehearsed. I wanted urgency, but got customer service. An hour later, I met the ship's security officer. He led me through a small control room lined with monitors, their gray light flickering across his face. He replayed footage from the hallway near our cabins. Nothing. No one had passed through except Nicole and me. I asked about the room next to hers. He scrolled through his log, frowned, then said, "That cabin's unoccupied, has been since departure." My stomach turned cold. Unoccupied? Yeah, sealed for maintenance. No guests, no staff, no access since the ship left port. That didn't make sense. I'd seen footprints. Nicole had seen someone. I could still hear the drag of shoes on metal, but the officer just shook his head and promised they'd check it out. That night, Nicole wanted to pack early. Her hands trembled as she folded her clothes, every zipper sounding too loud in that tiny room. She didn't talk much, neither of us did. We both knew sleep wasn't an option. We locked both balcony doors and pushed furniture against them. I stayed awake, sitting in a chair near the curtain, phone flashlight in my hand. Hours passed. The ship rocked gently, that same low hum under everything. I started to drift when a sound cut through the quiet, a scrape, soft and rhythmic, from outside. I froze. The chair beneath me felt like ice. Another sound, a dull, slow tap against the glass, deliberate, patient. I turned my flashlight toward the balcony door, and for just a second, I saw movement, a shadow leaning forward, too close to the glass. Then it was gone. Nicole woke up gasping, and I told her not to move. We sat there in silence, listening to the hum of the ship, hearts pounding in sync. The curtain stirred again, a faint pull from the outside, like someone tracing their fingers along the edge. I couldn't take it. I ripped the curtain open, nothing but the reflection of our pale faces. The ocean below churned, darker than the sky, but the divider between balconies. It was swinging slightly. The wind didn't move metal like that. Something had just passed through. I stepped outside, flashlight trembling in my hand. The neighboring balcony looked identical, empty, untouched. But the door there, the one that supposedly led to the sealed cabin, had faint smudges on the handle. It's like someone had gripped it recently. A sudden thud echoed from inside. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Nicole called my name, her voice cracking. The sound came again, a slow, dragging shuffle against the floor, followed by silence. Then, from behind that door, a whisper. Not words. Just breath. I didn't wait. We ran barefoot through the hall, past guests who turned in confusion. Security met us halfway, but I knew from their faces they wouldn't find anything. By the time they checked, that balcony would be empty again. That room would be unoccupied. We didn't sleep. Didn't even sit down. The next morning, we left early, 2 days before the cruise ended. Months have passed since, but I still wake up at night to that sound, the faint scrape of rubber on metal. Sometimes I catch myself glancing toward my window, half expecting the curtain to move. Nicole says she dreams about it too. In hers, the glass door slides open by itself, and a figure stands just outside, unmoving. When I asked her what she thought he wanted, she whispered, "He didn't want in. He wanted to be seen." And sometimes, when I stare too long into the dark outside my own window, I swear I can still feel it, that hum under everything, steady and alive. Like the ocean never let us go. Would you dare return to that ship?